Agreed to.
Mr.
The Honourable
Speaker.
Clayton Cosgrave.
Mr. Speaker, whilst the Labor Party, again in the spirit of most of these pieces of legislation, will support the bill, I've got to ask the Minister, I'm sure he's going to stay and sort of hang on every word. I'm going to make a couple of comments about the SOP that I've proposed, 408 to section 36. Now, this is quite important because the government's just said, we've just heard the Minister say that the National Party is the champion of competition. To a large extent, like all parties in this Parliament, that would be true, except there was a big issue that was raised in this House earlier this year in respect of the grocery trade, which the Minister rubbished from the then Honourable Shane Jones, who was a member of this Parliament, who he rubbished, who he basically went into denial over. Then it was found out that the Minister had been well informed about the concerns about this issue as far back, his government had as far back, if memory serves correct, his predecessor Simon Power in 2009. He then met with this current Minister with the CEO of the Grocery Suppliers Association, Catherine Rich, who the file note which he authored in his office, or was authored by his officials at his request or instruction, notes the conversation, notes the gravity of the issues, and if the issues weren't of sufficient gravity, one wonders why this Minister would have instructed his officials to, one, make a file note of the conversation, and two, go and rehearse various options and note them in the file note. And then nothing happened. And he stood in this House and said, I know nothing, but like sort of, was it Sergeant Schultz? I know nothing, I see nothing, I hear nothing. So whilst the Minister stands up and says he's the champion of competition, that's only limited to those aspects which interest that Minister. Now, we've proposed a pretty substantial amendment to a supplementary order paper in respect of section 36. And I have to say that there are some very eminent entities in this country, including the Chair in the Commerce Commission, the Productivity Commission, many in the telecommunications industry, who have called on section 36 to be amended in the way that my SOP number 408 does. Now, my colleague says we're in tune. Hell yes, we're in tune. Now, before I go into the nature of the supplementary order paper, I'll just deal with the Minister's response, because I sent the supplementary order paper, as is the wont to do in these commerce bills. There's pretty much cooperation. I sent it to the Minister on the 10th of December 2013. He then turned up at the Commerce Select Committee for the 2014-15 estimates a couple of weeks ago, and I asked him would he support it. So he's had it for nigh on 7 months. He said he would get his officials to look at it. I asked him in the Select Committee would he support it, and the answer was no, not because he didn't agree with it, but simply he wanted to put it through some sort of full policy process. Now, okay, fair enough, that's a logical step to undertake. However, he had 7 months to do it. 7 months to do it, and did nothing as this bill progressed through, such as his commitment to stamping out anti-competitive behaviour. And then we see in the letter that he wrote me on the 24th, which I received on the 24th of this month, and in it he says, although he rejects the SOP, he says, to this end, the government recently announced its intention to review section 36 as part of its Business Growth Agenda Future Directions 2014 report. So now we know that the Minister had our idea, endorsed by the Commerce Commission, endorsed and called for by the Productivity Commission, the telecommunication industries and others, for 7 months, decided to do nothing about it until he got a prod, and then the excuse is we're going to put it through a full policy process, which, given the Minister's track record on getting a policy process expedited through the bureaucracy, the Parliament and the Select Committee, God only knows how long it will be before we actually see, if at all, any proposed changes to section 36 as called on by external entities. Now, you'd think we were sort of changing, we were going to write things in tablets of stone. What we're actually changing in the proposal in section 36 is that as it stands, the Commerce Commission has to prove the intent of monopolies abusing market power rather than the effect of that behaviour. Now, to give a rather coarse example, but a simple one for one or two opposite, it's a bit like saying in a car accident where somebody injures somebody, breaks their legs, runs them over, what have you, we'll look at the intent, and the intent wasn't actually to do that, to maim the person, because it was an accident, but we won't look at the effect of the fact that that person may be permanently injured, unable to work, unable to earn an income, i.e. there's a series of negative impacts on that person's life. So that's the sort of basic example for Mr. Young opposite. In essence, the Act looks at the effect, but it doesn't look, or it looks at the intent, but it does not actually look at the impact and actions around the impact of anti-competitive behaviour. Now, it's a simple change, but it's an important change. We think that looking at that effect or that impact, actually what happened, who got done over, why they got done over, and how that had an impact on that entity or person, what was the anti-competitive behaviour, is extremely important. It's actually the practical outcome of the exercise. Now, as I say, the Productivity Commission's called for this, the Commerce Commission's called for this, and various other industry players have. And given that these bills are relatively non-contentious and generally almost always supported by the parties, we sent the Minister the SAP 7 months ago in the hope that this could be helpful. We didn't make a big song and dance about it. We told the world we were doing it. We hoped the Minister would take it seriously. And 7 months later, when he could have embarked upon his major policy root and branch policy process, all we get is a letter dated today that says we're going to look at it at some future time as part of a fancy sort of growth and industry agenda, and sort of mix it up on the sort of politics of the day. Now, I think that says more about the Minister than it actually does about what we want to do here tonight. There's an opportunity to pass a simple SOP to have a major impact on anti-competitive behaviour and give the Commerce Commission, particularly, some really good grunt in terms of going after this sort of stuff. And the question I'd just like to ask the Minister, and I'm sure he will give another dissertation as we move through this, is rather than just saying, you know, policy process, that's what we have to do, I'd like an explanation as to why he didn't embark on that 7 long months ago. 7 long months ago. Because he says on the one hand he is the champion of going after anti-competitive activity. He says he's the champion of business. He says he supports this bill. He says he wants to cooperate with other parties and get the best possible piece of legislation out. And yet when he's given the opportunity to do so, and we would have supported, I have to say, a truncated policy process because, and I believe industry would have, the Commerce Commission would have, and the Productivity Commission would have, if we'd all come together and said, look, we think this is the right thing to do, but we want to health check it, we want to ensure we consult, but we don't want to mess around with this, we want to get it done because it is the right thing to do. This side of the House, I'm sure other parties as well, would have supported that. But nothing happened. Silence is deafening from this Minister. The same Minister who got up and rubbished the grocery issue, said it was all a lot of hot air, and then suddenly the Commerce Commission put 7 to 8 investigators on the case. Subpoenas fly around this country like lightning bolts. Witnesses are brought in, and they're taking that issue extremely seriously. But it is a worry when the Minister of Commerce, the highest officer within that portfolio, decides in an arbitrary way to simply rubbish it, and then criticises others, by the way, for putting up suggestions prior to the Commerce Commission reporting, and then sneaks around the back door and actually cuddles up to the very organisation that's being investigated by the Commerce Commission to do some sort of slipshod deal on a voluntary agreement to in some way prove to us that he's on the case and he's actually doing something. Well, the arguments around this the Minister puts are riddled with holes. We expect some accountability, and at the very least, Mr Speaker, we expect an explanation as to why he won't support SOP 408.
I call Jonathan Young.
This man should be Minister. He'd get it done.
Well, I think just in response to